Um, I had a weird, I don't know if this is going to stay up. It's bouncing on the screen right now, so it keeps like moving. Okay. Well, I guess we'll see. So I had this dream last night that got really weird. There was a bunch of stuff going on in my dreams. In my dream, it was like a whole bunch of different dreams mixed together, and a lot of it was like these bugs. Like there was all these different types of bugs. Like at one point, like I like stepped in a pile of maggots and I had bugs in my sock, and I remember like freaking out trying to get this person to get the bugs off, and they wouldn't do it. So there was also like this part where it was like a movie or like a video game, and there was this like giant worm, or like not like a worm, kind of like a giant grub, like a big old maggot. It was like, you know how like when a queen is pregnant, like a queen bug is pregnant and she gets super fat and maggoty? It's kind of like that, like super big, only like this thing is the size of like a couple semi trucks. And like I was on this like big tower and like swinging around and having to fight all these little, like, if you've ever played Morrowind or Skyrim, like these little like Chorus type bugs, like these like weird kind of beetle-y type bugs. And there was a lot of bugs all throughout the dream, and it kept changing. The dream kept changing. There was a lot going on, and I really like, I can't even recall all of it, but the part that stuck out to me the most, now, oh, excuse me, sorry, was this like part where these people were talking, and I was like eavesdropping essentially, and it's at like this travel agency, and I heard them talking about how my real dad, who has been dead since I was 6 weeks old, so I never knew him, was not actually my real dad, but was actually my brother, and that my mom had been not necessarily having an affair with my grandpa, his dad, but more that they're all involved in this like cult, where like my grandpa was like one of the high priests and would sleep with a lot of women, and that there's apparently a lot of different relatives of mine that I'm unaware of just running about, but that he had like essentially like not really assaulted my mom because she had given herself to him for the sake of this cult. And then there was like all of these like there was like a whole bunch of information that like came really quickly that like I feel it's weird because I feel like I like retained it, but I haven't like processed it yet. And that's been something that's been happening in dreams a lot lately too. I had a dream a couple weeks ago where these two interdimensional beings appeared and gave me a cuneiform message that I understood and the other people in the room didn't, and they were expecting me to break down the message for them. And in the dream I didn't, and when I woke up, like it was one of those things where like it's not that I don't understand the message because I kind of get the gist of it, but it's way too much to like process and comprehend right now, and so it's like going to take time to like to do that and to like come to the right understandings of things before like I fully understand what was being like expressed and explained. It was almost like all of this information was just like, it wasn't like it was like handed to me in the dream. It was like telekinetically like put into my head, and now there's like this process of me like working to know myself properly so that I can understand the information. And like I said, this is something that's been happening multiple times now in dreams lately. And so this particular message was very interesting. And it just started, like, I remember waking up, like, very emotional, because, like, it made me feel, like, all these different types of ways as to, like, that's why I've always felt the way that I've felt, and that's actually, like, this weird little secret that's always been going on, but, like, you know, that's made me feel, like, a whole bunch of ways, or that's the reason that so many things are the way they are, but at the same time, like, it's so much deeper than that. There's so much else that could, like, was going on or went into the scenario, and, like, why my dad was killed, and, you know, like, which, like, in waking life and in my active reality, you know, I've been told since I was a child that he died drunk driving, and he got in an accident. He wasn't wearing his chest belt. He only had his lap belt on, and he lost control of the vehicle. He took a turn too fast, lost control of the vehicle, went over these, like, little rope things that were in this one particular. I saw where he died. I saw you know, you couldn't really see in the dirt, like, any lines from the car, but you could see that they had fixed the little rope part that he had driven through, and you could see the tree. I mean, I saw it, like, you know, maybe 25 years after it had happened. 20 years, probably like 20 years, maybe not even, after it had happened. So you know, it was like older markings on the tree, but you could still see the markings in the tree. And he hit a tree and slammed forward and punctured his lung with one of his ribs. He broke his ribs on the steering wheel and punctured his lungs. And apparently he called the ambulance, and by the time the ambulance got there, he called the ambulance himself. And then by the time the ambulance got there, he was, like, delirious and kind of almost in and out of consciousness at that point, and he was convinced that my mom and my brothers were with him. He kept asking where Bert and the boys were, and died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. And then when they took his blood alcohol level, apparently the nurse had mentioned that, like, he was likely to not survive one way or the other that night because he had so much alcohol in his system. He had, like, 0.34 or something like that, 0.32, something like that is what I was told. Now, that's what I was told, you know, when I was younger. So that's kind of just the story that I've kept with me. But there's just been so much that's gone on in my life that really made me question the validity of, like, anything I've ever been told about my family. And there's been so much I've found about my family that, like, wasn't the conception I had of them growing up. And, like, especially, like, there's just so much. There's just so much that's gone into things. And, like, I guess that's probably where, like, a lot of these weird concepts come from, is mostly just because, like, I was such a sensitive kid, and a lot of these different things, like, could have been seemingly innocent, but because I wasn't told the truth fully about everything, like, when I was an adult and they finally thought I could understand the truth, like, for instance, my parents smoking pot the entire time I was growing up, I thought that they were completely opposed to drugs. My mom had talked about how she, you know, had done a whole bunch of drugs back in the 70s. She had pretty much done any drug you could imagine, you know, in the 70s and 80s. She'd done everything. She'd done everything at least once before. But she told us that, like, you know, it's like, but that was before I was a Christian, and now that I'm a Christian, I don't do anything, and, like, it's important not to do anything. And, like, when I was growing up, when I was very young, like, my mom didn't even, like, take Tylenol. We didn't take medicine often at all. Like, I don't, you know, I remember taking NyQuil at my grandma's house when I was, like a teenager. Like, I was, like, older, and I couldn't do it. It was really hard. I remember trying to take it as a kid, and I always struggled taking medicine as a kid, too, actually. But, like, we really weren't given it that consistently, and I didn't like it to begin with. I guess maybe that's part of why I remember it that way. But, like, I couldn't take pills and stuff until I was in my 20s, even. Just had a very hard time with medicine, and we never, like, really went to the doctor. The only times we went to the doctor is when we, like, required a physical for whatever reason. But aside from that, like, we never really went to the doctor. I got stitches. I did go to the emergency room to get stitches when I was about, I don't know, maybe 7, I guess. 6, 7, around there. It had to have been, it was around 6, because we moved to Burlington, we moved from Burlington to Paddock Lake by the time I was just turned 8. So it was like 6, 7 that I got stitches, because we were still in Burlington when that happened. But aside from that, like, we did not go to the doctor often. I remember the times we went to the doctor, because it was so not often. We didn't get flu shots or anything like that. I did go to the doctor for consistent urinary tract infections when I was younger, because I had blood in my panties when I was like a child. My mom took me to the doctor, and I don't really remember what came of that. But there was, like, I had multiple different types of trauma to my private parts, like, just from, like, being a kid and, like, you know, like, falling on the seesaw the wrong way and having it slam down on me, or, like, landing on my pelvic bone while I was playing volleyball, and, like, you know, stuff like that. But, like, I also, I just was getting urinary tract infections all the time. You know, and they explained to me how to wipe and stuff, but I wasn't doing anything, like, necessary. It wasn't necessarily from that. And then what was weird about all that is just because when I actually went to the gynecologist for the first time when I was 18, I was told that I had scar tissue in my hymen. She had asked if I was sexually active, and I told her yes. And at the time, that I was only with my first partner, and she told me that, that I had scar tissue in my hymen, which I thought was weird. But, like, I mean, I experienced a lot, so I don't know. My childhood was weird. Like, it's weird looking at it now, because, like, I'm in such a different mindset than I was when I was growing up. I was very confused about everything when I was little. So, like, you know, I had this wild imagination trying to make sense of things, and, you know, it's hard to separate, like, what kind of is the results of that and what was actually happening. And, you know, I don't have a relationship with my family for multiple reasons, and, you know, it's just a weird one. And then even, like, you know, like, my brother, like, I know, you know, had molested me multiple times, and, like, that I, you know, it was kind of just something that he did back when we were growing up to pretty much everybody he could, but mostly boys. Like, I was really the only girl. You know, he had fooled around with our cousin that was a girl, but, like, that was kind of all something that, like, our whole family was open about and understood, and kind of just was like, yeah, well, they're just kids. But they didn't know about it with me necessarily. That's something I kind of kept a secret. I told my mom, and she kind of just, you know, was like, that's just what boys do. He's not trying to hurt you. Pretty much just, like, get used to it, you know. But she swears that wasn't what she was trying to convey. She was more just scared of the concept that her son could be being predatory sexually at such a young age. So she kind of just ignored all of it. She didn't want to think about it. She thought that was the best option, I guess. It's kind of how she is with everything. She just ignores it. She just acts like it never happens. She just swears that things never happened, and just that's what's going to make it go away, you know, if she ignores it hard enough. And so she is extremely ignorant. And I remember, like, her explaining that to me, like, oh, I'm just ignorant. And I was like, when you say that, you say it like you mean naive, but what you're actually admitting is that you are intentionally ignoring things for your own benefit. And, like, that isn't a great quality, and that isn't something that I can just easily excuse, especially when it comes to, like, how fucked up I was as a kid because of everything you were being ignorant to. It's more ignorant of. So yeah, it's a weird one, and I don't really know what to think. And maybe things truly aren't as nefarious as they've always they didn't seem that way when I was a kid either. I was actually just very confused. I was paranoid as a child, but I didn't equate it to my family necessarily. I did, but I didn't. I felt like it was in The Truman Show. I watched The Truman Show when I was 8 years old, and it fucked me up. I was already a paranoid child and already kind of confused about a lot of things. I was already like having insomnia really bad. I was already like having fears of, you know, my brother and my stepdad, because of you know, the different stuff that I had experienced. So when I watched that, it kind of threw me for a loop. That whole movie really fucked me up to the point where like I have the Truman delusion now. Like I often, you know, feel like the world is like I have like this weird, it's like, you know, like schizoaffective. And I've gone to therapy. I went to therapy for 60 years and asked for diagnoses that way if I could do any sort of testing to, you know, be diagnosed with any sort of personality disorder, any sort of like psychological disorder, and the only thing I've ever been diagnosed with, I mean, I asked and like they're like, you don't, that's not what your problem is. I literally had a therapist kind of like laugh, and she was like, you're not schizophrenic, like you have ADHD and you have very severe CPTSD, and you know, until we can get to the cause of those, like I don't think you have any issue. But I remember like arguing with the therapist too about it, because she was like, you're too self-aware and articulate to have those problems. Like you're not delusional. You know, you might not remember things right, or you might like have, you know, an active imagination, but that's coming from the CPTSD. You're not delusional. And I was like, just because I'm articulate and self-aware doesn't mean that I can't be delusional. Like I'm because I've felt delusional, like that's how I've learned how to be so communicative, and that's why I'm so self-aware. So I'm like hyper fixated on it, right? To figure out those answers. And she was like, right, but that's not what somebody that actually has those things would be like. Which is just weird, because like my dad's older brother, well, my real dad's older brother was really schizophrenic. So like, it's not like it's, you know, my both sides of my family have had mental disorders when it comes to like bipolar on both sides, you know, schizophrenia on the one side, like weird psychological issues really on both sides. I think, I mean, my mom's a psychopath, my brother is a sociopath. Like, you know, my mom doesn't go to therapy. If she did, I would put money on her being diagnosed with some form of psychopathy, or just a really, really severe sociopathy. But that made sense when my brother told me that, you know, that's what he thought, and that he was going to therapy for that. Okay, this is gonna end soon because I forgot to delete the videos. Okay, so there's just been a lot. My family's fucked up, so it wouldn't surprise me if I'm fucked up. But after all the years of therapy I've gone to, they haven't diagnosed me with anything but CPTSD and ADHD. And the results of that have been having generalized anxiety disorder and having major depressive disorder, which I have worked I've worked a long time and extremely hard with, to the point where like I'm not generally affected by those things, at least not to the severity at all that I was prior. You know, it's far more subtle now and something far more manageable. But yeah, this dream that I had was weird, and it's making me feel weird, because that was just like some random information I wasn't necessarily expecting to get, and it just kind of triggered a whole lot of things where it like started to make things feel like they were falling into place, and I felt like I needed to talk about it just because it was like, that's a weird thing to make things fall into place. And like, it's just not necessarily something, I wouldn't put it past anything, because I just grew up and so weird, and I just have all these weird feelings about my childhood and you know, the people that I grew up with and what I can trust about anything. And I know people that have had some weird stuff like that happen in their lives, where they find out that their grandpa's actually their dad, sort of deal, right? So like, I know that stuff happens. I don't think those things are even as uncommon as we would like to believe that they are. I think we live in a weird world where a lot of weird stuff is going on, and I've just always felt like there's something in my life that like I haven't been told, that there's something under the surface, that there's a lot of weird, that there's a conspiracy, right? I have this weird paranoia that there's some conspiracy. Like I said, the Truman delusion. I can pass it off as those things, but a lot of what I've found in my life has like pointed in the direction of those things. Again, this video is about to end, but so I don't know if I can even get this out, but like finding out about like the way that my parents, specifically my mom, handled the inheritance from both my dad, you know, my dead dad and his mom. And especially because I'm pretty sure that my grandma also received all of my uncle's everything from when he passed away. So like there was definitely more to it than I've been told, and I've been kept from so much. And like my family keeps these secrets from me. They don't involve me in these things. I became estranged from them for those things already going on. And then as I became estranged, my mom was like, well then fuck you if you don't need the family. Like I'm just gonna do everything I can to like cut you out of everything. She swears that isn't what she's doing. She swears she loves me, but her actions don't show that. And she would swear that it's because I haven't given her the space to, but every single time I've ever given her the space to, all she does is fight with me and demean me and try to hurt me and try to break me down psychologically and emotionally and physically. And she wants me to need her, and if I don't need her, she doesn't get along with me. And like she's just not well, you know. And it's like the more that I'm able to just like, I'll like jokingly, like lightheartedly, like not thinking anything of it, share experiences from my life with people in this while they're sharing experiences about their life, and they'll be like, that's fucked up, and that's really fucked up. Like so many different things. And it's like I've heard that so much now that like I can't deny it. I just, you know, I'm still trying to process those things because I didn't recognize how fucked up shit really was. And now it seems like it's so much more fucked up than like I can even understand. Not that I can't understand it, because I understand the way a lot of these things work in the realm of like cult behavior. But like I would have to prove that my family is actively in a cult before I could fully accept these things, right? I'd have to like, I wish I could afford a lawyer, because I could really use some legal support to understand these things and to really like break some of this stuff down. But in the meantime, I'm just doing my best to take care of myself and hoping that the universe, you know, is working towards, I trust that. I trust that the universe is working towards truth, that karma is coming, that the tables are turning, that, you know, if I just keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that like I'll have to deal with my own karma, but so will everybody else have to deal with theirs, and that the truth will come out, and that people's sins will find them out just as much as mine have been found out, and will continue to, you know. And I try not to fear that, and I try to just keep moving in the direction of I receive that and I accept that in order to make space and allowance for it to happen, so that these other things can be revealed too. If at the end it's just revealed that I'm fucking crazy, I can accept that. I've been saying it forever, but I just don't. I think that there is a lot more under the surface, and I'm not saying that my grandpa is my dad. But that was a wild, weird thing to have in a dream, and like I just don't know where a lot of this stuff is necessarily coming from, or what to do with this information. So here's a little self-therapizing, which I haven't fully done in a while, this type of way. A lot of it's been done through my tarot readings or through my storytelling and stuff like that. This is just straight me feeling some type of way and needing to say it out loud. And I'm just going to let the cards fall where they may from here. Weird, but I need to get it out. Okay, have a good day, and maybe I'll see you later.